They forced her face to the airport floor before they ever knew she was a federal judge. It wasn't loud. Real harm rarely is. It came quietly, the way certainty arrives, unchallenged, untested, and wrong. Judge Naomi Carter had moved through hundreds of secured buildings in her life, through halls where marble echoed power and carpet swallowed secrets. She knew authority granted and earned. She understood caution protocol vetting. But this moment it was not caution. It was assumption wearing a uniform. The terminal buzzed with the rehearsed rhythm of travel. Rolling suitcases rushed, footsteps, layered announcements, coffee orders whispered by tired lips. A million private worlds crossing briefly in one shared space. Morning sunlight filtered through tall glass, catching the edges of polished flooring and faces half awake. She walked with the calm assurance of someone who belonged everywhere she stepped. Coat-fitted posture, tall briefcase, balanced, not a symbol, but an extension of a life built through earned ground. Yet one glance was enough. One airport police officer's eyes narrowed as she approached the TSA pre-check priority lane. There was no alarm sounded, no whispered warning from speakers. His assumption made the call before protocol ever could. "Ma'am, stop right there." No sirens, just suspicion disguised as procedure. She slowed, hand steadying the strap on her briefcase, turning slightly enough to acknowledge the voice, but not enough to suggest guilt. "Yes, you can't enter there." His tone wasn't aggressive. Worse, it was dismissive. "I'm pre-check," she said evenly. "I'll present judicial ID." A second airport police officer approached, younger chest, slightly puffed with the adrenaline of assumed authority. People often confuse confidence with competence at that age. "Identification," he demanded. "It's in my case," she answered. "I'll present." Hands where we can see them. It escalated not from danger, but from the belief that she was one, and from the quiet calculus this country too often reserves for a black woman standing where certainty thinks she should not. A traveler with too many assumptions in his expression muttered to someone beside him, "Knew it." "Happens all the time." Another voice, softer, apologetic in tone but not intent, whispered, "Crazy world now. Can't trust anyone." No one questioned what anyone meant. Language protects bias when tone pretends neutrality. She raised her hands slowly. Brief pause in the air. Instinct born not from fear, but from survival. Rehearsed over years. A single breath drawn in measured. She had spent decades teaching lawyers how to stay composed. This moment did not deserve to break her discipline. One officer's hand clamped onto her arm. Not firm for safety, firm for control. And then the floor rose to meet her. Her knee struck tile, her palm braced instinctively. A knee landed between her shoulder blades, weight leaning in with casual certainty. No chaotic scuffle, no resistance. Dignity held still. Her cheek rested against cold tile polished to reflect the world above her. In that reflection, she saw blurred movement, a man adjusting his watch, a woman lowering her gaze, a teenager raising her phone. "What did she do?" Someone murmured. "She must have refused something." Another replied as if refusal itself was a crime deserving gravity. The idea settled around her guilt assigned before explanation offered. "Stay still," the officer said. She exhaled once. "I am." Her voice didn't shake. Every word ironed flat, measured precise. But precision offers no protection when perception builds walls faster than truth can walk through them. The officer leaned closer. "Trying to skip screening, huh?" "I presented myself for screening," she answered. "In the pre-check lane with judicial credentials." "You hesitated." A single beat. A single pause twisted into defiance. A breath mistaken for threat. She turned her head slightly, the movement limited by weight. "I adjusted my bag." He didn't answer. He pressed harder. Someone behind them sighed impatiently. "This is holding up the line." People prefer justice when it's convenient. When it takes time, neutrality becomes silence. Her briefcase lay a few feet away, toppled open. A fountain pen rolled across tile, stopping at the boot of a man watching from a distance. He didn't move to help. He nudged the pen aside gently with his foot, careful not to engage but unwilling to fully ignore. Her official badge case spilled open just enough to reveal a glint of gold, a judicial seal half hidden in leather. No one looked close enough. Not yet. Phones continued rising. Some framed her face, some framed the officers. Some recorded only the idea of justice as performance. "Why priority lane?" one officer asked. "I carry federal judicial ID," she said, "and I'm pre-check." He barked a short laugh. "Sure you do." No threat in his voice, just certainty, the kind that comes from never questioning who belongs. The tile beneath her cheek held the morning's cold like a secret. Shadows stretched from luggage wheels and shoes passing by. Metal detectors beeped in the background. A child began to cry somewhere in line, tugging at a mother's sleeve. The mother hurried away, refusing to let her child see what the world decides without facts. One airport employee walked past, lips pressed together, guilt flickering across her face. The guilt of someone who recognized injustice but feared uniform more than silence. And then a shift in atmosphere before sound carried meaning. The TSA supervisor arrived, breath-sharp shoes scraping against tile from urgency. His eyes flicked to the scattered briefcase and the open badge case. The federal seal caught light. Recognition locked in not from rumor, but from evidence. Stop, get off her, now! Both officers froze. Recognition arrived too late to matter, yet early enough to shame. The older officer's voice stumbled. She is Judge Naomi Carter, the supervisor said, each word stripped bare. Let her up. The knee lifted. The grip loosened. Air returned to her lungs, not as relief, but as truth reclaiming ground. She rose slowly, not fragile, but deliberate. Precision returned to posture. She adjusted her coat, brushed her sleeve once. Her silence reprimanded louder than outrage ever could. The officer who pinned her swallowed hard. We didn't know. Naomi looked at him, gaze calm, cold, exact. You didn't ask. A woman who witnessed whispered God. They tackled a judge. Another replied, imagine if she wasn't. Someone else mumbled, trying to hide discomfort. Well, how were they supposed to know? By asking, by seeing, by thinking. But no one said that aloud. She collected her papers one by one. Not rushed, not shaking. Each page lifted with the grace of someone refusing to give humiliation a second life. The teenager with the phone suddenly lowered it. Shame replacing curiosity. She stared at Naomi with something new in her eyes, not pity but awakening. A man in business attire cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. Not sorry, uneasy. Because witnessing injustice forces a person to choose discomfort or denial. The airport hum shifted. Conversation slowed. Nobody clapped. No applause for dignity restored late. Just silence, heavy, honest, unavoidable. The supervisor spoke softly, cautious Judge Carter. We'll take you to our private office. She turned her face to him, protocol now. His lips parted, but he found no defense. She stepped forward on her own terms, walking past the officers who had mistaken her existence for intrusion. Neither looked at her. Not out of defiance, out of realization they had mistaken a woman of authority for someone without identity. No justice yet, just revelation. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. People adjusted posture as she passed, not admiration, but accountability. A woman rose slowly from a bench, hand pressed to her heart. A pilot waiting by the gate straightened instinctively. A janitor paused, eyes following her with quiet recognition, dignity spotting dignity. The officers remained frozen in place. Their authority, unquestioned minutes ago, now trembled in their joints. Naomi's steps were measured soft echoes on polished ground. Not triumph, not anger. A quiet reminder. Power is not proven when you stand tall. Sometimes it is proven when you rise from the floor without losing yourself. If someone watching has ever held themselves together while the world tried to fold them small, they understood her silence more than any headline ever could. She walked, and the airport breathed differently around her, as if aware that something had cracked in the foundation of assumption and had yet to settle. And the world outside her path did not resume. It adjusted. Not out of respect, but out of truth suddenly finally seen. The corridor swallowed the noise of the terminal behind her. Carpet muted every step. Frosted glass softened every silhouette. Judge Naomi Carter followed the TSA supervisor without hurrying, without lagging a measured pace designed not by pride but by correctness. She moved like someone who had nothing to explain and nothing left to prove. The supervisor's shoes tapped faster than hers, anxiety leaking into rhythm. He kept glancing back, not sure whether to speak or disappear. In his face lived a new fear, not of disciplinary action, not of headlines, but of understanding too late the weight of a mistake he hadn't prevented. He swiped his badge at a metal door. It clicked open, revealing a private elevator. They stepped inside walls reflecting three blurred shapes Naomi composed. The supervisor rattled, and behind them a junior TSA employee who had insisted on accompanying them, the same young woman who had watched the incident unfold and said nothing until it was safe. In silence, the elevator rose. The young woman stared at the floor fingers knotted in front of her. She looked like someone holding a truth too large for her chest. Naomi didn't look at her, didn't search her face. She didn't need to. Regret has a posture. Shoulders drawn inward, weight, uneven breath, shallow, as if each inhale carried apology. The doors opened to a quiet administrative floor where voices filtered through walls in low, uncertain tones. The kind of voices that emerge when people sense a storm but haven't chosen whether to witness or hide. They walked toward a side office. A clerk seated behind a glass desk stood the moment she saw Naomi abruptly enough to make her chair roll back 6 inches. Startled, reverent, horrified, she pressed a hand to her blouse as if steadying herself. "Judge Carter, eye this way, please." Her voice fought between respect and remorse. She led them into a conference room with minimal decor, clean table, 2 chairs, water bottles, a box of tissues untouched. A room designed for controlled crises, not emotional ones. Naomi remained standing. The supervisor cleared his throat. "We'll bring the preliminary reports in just a moment." She didn't answer. Silence hung in the air like a verdict waiting to be read. 2 administrators entered, one senior one still learning how to carry authority. They froze when they recognized her. Their faces shifted through stages: confusion, recognition, shame, calculation. "Judge Carter," the senior administrator said, "We deeply regret what happened downstairs." "No," she replied, voice level. "Regret follows ignorance. This followed assumption." He exhaled shakily. "You're right." The junior administrator placed a folder on the table. "We started collecting accounts and camera footage." Naomi didn't sit. She didn't touch the folder. Her posture asked one question without words. "What will you reveal without being pressed?" The junior administrator opened the folder for her, flipping pages carefully, almost reverently, like he was performing penance instead of procedure. Reports written minutes earlier filled the pages. Lines of text reflected a familiar pattern, technical phrasing hiding subjective judgment. Passenger attempted to enter restricted lane without proper verification. Non-compliance observed. Appearance did not match standard credentialed traveler profile. Words chosen with care. Words that had condemned her before her identity saved her. Words that would have stood uncontested if her badge had been tucked a fraction deeper inside her briefcase. The junior administrator swallowed hard. "We've begun drafting internal review steps." "Actions," Naomi said, cutting clean through the sentence. "Not drafts. Actions." "Yes, Judge." The senior administrator shifted. "Of course. And you will have full authority to review." "Authority?" Naomi's brow lifted. "My authority was never the issue. Your perception was." The air stiffened. The young TSA woman's breath caught. Shame rippled through her posture again, but this time not the timid shame of witnessing. The sharper shame of participation through silence. A knock interrupted the tension. The door opened to a young TSA agent, badge crooked nerves obvious, carrying a tablet. His voice wavered slightly. "Footage is ready." The senior administrator nodded, though the motion felt more like surrender than direction. The agent placed the tablet on the table and pressed play. Everyone's eyes turned to the screen. Naomi stayed motionless, gaze steady as her body appeared on the floor. Again, controlled, helpless in posture, but not in spirit. The airport police officer's knee, the scattered documents, the passing eyes, the turning backs. Bias quiet enough to be mistaken for routine. The room remained silent. Humiliation viewed through a screen is colder than in person because you cannot interrupt it. It plays until it decides to stop. When the video ended, no one spoke. Finally, the young woman who had followed from the terminal whispered, "I should have stepped forward sooner." Naomi did not turn toward her. She didn't offer comfort or condemnation. She simply said, "Do so next time." The woman nodded quickly, a promise forged in stillness. The senior administrator tried again, weaker now. "We will begin mandatory retraining." "Training does not fix belief," Naomi said. "It only adds language to bias." He flinched. "Then what would you have us do?" "See." Her tone did not shift. "See it when it happens. See who it happens to. See why no one speaks until it is too late. Her voice didn't rise. Conviction didn't need volume. It sat in the room like weight, demanding chairs, minds, and excuses all adjust around it. The junior administrator opened another file, thicker, older. We pulled prior incidents that might match the pattern. He hesitated before showing the pages. Inside were reports dated months apart. Travelers described as confused, non-compliant, overly assertive, none with behavior, detailed only tone and presence. Travelers who looked nothing like the officers who detained them. Naomi turned a page with the same precision she used turning case files that determined lives. How many informal complaints? Several, he admitted. Many verbal, a few handwritten, none escalated. Why not? Silence answered. Not ignorance, not confusion, reluctance. She closed the folder. Systemic behavior often hides behind individual decisions. The senior administrator tried to find footing. Judge Carter, we are committed to correcting this. Commitment is proven by process, she said, not apology. He nodded slowly. It was not agreement, it was submission to truth. Her phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. She ignored it. Real responsibilities existed beyond this room court schedules, pending decisions, lives weighed on paper. The world still needed her clarity. Even now, even here. The supervisor spoke gently, voice gentler than earlier. We will escort you to your gate privately. It's the least we can do. He meant it as consideration. It sounded like containment. She picked up her briefcase. I will walk myself. They did not try to stop her. They only stepped aside. Down the hallway, eyes followed again. Not suspicion this time. Accountability. A hush moved ahead of her steps, the way a room changes when someone enters who forces truth into public light. Glass walls revealed the terminal below. Travelers still rolled bags, ordered lattes, checked phones. But the world felt different for those who had seen the footage, heard her voice, felt their assumptions questioned. Their posture carried the shift, quiet, awkward, uneasy. They knew now, and knowing changes everything. Near the security checkpoint exit, a janitor paused, pushing a cart. Her eyes lifted, meeting Naomi's. Silent recognition. No shock, only a nod, subtle and slow, from one who had seen more than others guess. Naomi nodded back, respect exchanged without theatrics. The young TSA agent who brought the tablet waited at the corridor door. When she approached, he stepped aside quickly. Not in fear, in acknowledgement. Ma'am, he said softly, if you ever need a statement from me, I'll give one. She held his gaze, then speak with accuracy. I will. He meant it. She knew he did. There are voices that shake not because they lack conviction, but because they are learning how to carry it. She stepped through the door into the terminal again. Noise returned, rolling luggage, distant calls, airport chatter. Life continued as if nothing had happened. But it had, and the space around her knew it. Travelers glanced at her, some pretending not to stare, others failing to hide recognition. The teenage girl with the phone stood near a bench, now still holding the device, but not recording. When their eyes met, she lowered her phone fully and straightened, uncertain whether to apologize or thank her. Naomi offered no expression, none was needed. She walked toward her gate. Her steps remained steady. Her breath controlled her posture unshaken. Power restored not by titles, but by the refusal to yield it. A flight attendant waiting at the boarding podium stiffened when she saw her, then nodded respectfully. Not ceremonially, sincerely. A person who understood this moment marked something she didn't want to pretend away. Naomi continued forward. Her dignity did not shout. It existed. And for the first time that morning, everyone around could see it clearly. Some truths land slowly. Others arrive the moment a woman rises from a floor she never belonged on in the first place. If someone listening has ever been forced into a moment that demanded they hold themselves together, while others chose comfort over courage, they know what her silence carried now. They know the power of standing up without raising your voice, of walking forward without asking permission, of being seen only after someone tried to erase you. And if someone hearing this believes dignity is quiet, controlled, and relentless, they already know why her footsteps did not rush and why the world around her had no choice but to adjust. She walked and the terminal moved around her, not dismissing her this time, considering her. And consideration is where change begins. The terminal settled behind her like a scene she had already judged and archived, not forgotten, simply placed in its proper file within memory. Judge Naomi Carter walked with the calm of someone who refused to let urgency steal dignity. She did not rush. She did not hide. Her briefcase hung at her side, weight balanced, composed like the rest of her. Security staff kept glancing from a distance, not daring to approach, yet unable to look away. Their posture carried a new tension, not authority, but awareness. The kind that comes only when a uniform is suddenly smaller than a truth that used to be invisible. Near gate C-17, a cluster of airline managers waited. One stepped forward, a middle-aged man with polished posture tie immaculately straight even at the early hour. He had the look of someone trained to handle VIPs and disasters, unsure which he represented. Judge Carter. He began, voice respectful but cautious. We have arranged a private waiting area for you. His tone was practiced, but his eyes held something real, a quiet discomfort at being part of a system exposed by its own routine. That discomfort was an early form of change. Not noble, but necessary. Naomi paused. And why would I need privacy? He inhaled, prepared for resistance. Not as privilege. Comfort. And safety. Safety, a word that arrived too late. She studied his face. He meant well not as apology, but as correction. That mattered more. Intent could be polished. Action was currency. Show me, she said. They moved through a controlled hallway toward a glass-paneled suite overlooking the runway. The space was simple, not luxurious, not ostentatious. A quiet room, a table, a sofa, a window stretching the length of the wall. Outside, planes taxied across the morning light, moving with certainty and purpose. Inside, the silence felt like a room built to contain tension without shattering. The manager gestured toward the space. Coffee, water. Anything at all? Nothing, she replied. He nodded, quickly retreating with the awkward grace of someone who had been dismissed by truth, not arrogance. When the door closed, Naomi remained standing. A private room can feel like protection or isolation. Context decides which. Today it felt neutral, a place to breathe but not to retreat. She walked to the window, hands lightly resting on the back of the nearest chair. The tarmac beyond stretched wide and organized every vehicle and person in motion for a purpose. Airports run on systems, physical, logistical, human. When one system fails, the consequences ripple. Today, a system failed on her skin and her breath. Her phone vibrated again. She pulled it out. A message from her clerk court starts at 10. Files prepared. Standing by. She typed one instruction, stay ready, then placed the phone screen down. Work moved forward. The world did not pause for humiliation. She would not either. The door clicked softly. The junior TSA woman, the one who had followed silently and finally spoken, entered with careful steps as if the air required permission. I was told to bring you this. Her voice shook slightly. A formal incident report. A sealed envelope. They wanted transparency. Wanted it now. Naomi did not reach for the papers. The young woman hesitated. May I speak to you for a moment? No one else would have asked. Most would have delivered the documents and fled. Silence is easier than remorse. She was choosing discomfort, and that alone earned room to speak. Naomi inclined her head once. The agent exhaled relief, barely visible. I should have intervened sooner. I know that. I froze. Her eyes lifted, holding weight rather than seeking forgiveness. And I don't want to freeze next time. Fear is human, Naomi said. What you do after fear defines you. I didn't want to be seen as getting involved where I shouldn't, or challenging officers. I thought staying quiet was safest. It was safest, Naomi answered. For you. The young woman blinked. She had expected rebuke. Instead, she received truth. It landed heavier. But safety at someone else's expense. Naomi continued, is not neutrality. It is participation. The agent swallowed hard. I know, and I don't want to be that person. Then don't. Naomi's voice remained even. Not tomorrow, not when cameras exist, not when titles matter, in the moment when no one is watching. That is where character proves itself. A long, quiet breath. Thank you, the young woman said. I won't forget that. She set the envelope gently on the table and left with the careful dignity of someone carrying her own correction forward. Silence returned. Naomi approached the table, broke the seal, and glanced at the incident form. Official language wrapped around the truth like padding. Subject detained due to security concern. Subject uncooperative in verification process. Officers acted within reasonable perception of threat. Reasonable perception. The phrase sat still on the page, both shield and blade. She placed the papers face down without a word. She would not correct their language here. She would correct the system that produced it. Outside the window, a family walked across the tarmac toward a regional jet. Mother carrying a toddler. Father pulling a suitcase, child bouncing beside them. Ordinary life unaffected, moving forward. That was the world she protected, even when it failed her. The door opened again, soft knock, then a hesitant enter. This time a different figure stepped inside, the senior TSA administrator from earlier, holding his jacket folded over one arm, sleeves rolled up now. Formality stripped intention bare. He closed the door behind him. Judge Carter. She didn't turn fully, yes. I reviewed the officers' histories, he said, tone quiet. Patterns exist. We did not see them clearly enough. You saw them, she replied, still looking at the runway. You did not act. He didn't deny it. That was its own admission. I am changing our internal procedures, he continued. Immediate review when complaints involve bias indicators. Mandatory reporting escalation. Clear disciplinary tracks. Real ones. Paper protocols do not shift culture, she said. No, he agreed softly. Leadership does. He looked older in that moment, not in years, but in understanding. Understanding costs age. I know you don't need apologies, he added. Apologies erase discomfort, not memory. His breath caught at the precision. She wasn't lashing out. She was naming truth with surgical simplicity. He nodded, not defeated, but recalibrated. We will be better, he said. Be honest, she corrected. Better comes after honesty. He exhaled slowly, understood. He left without another word. Silence resumed steady, unthreatened. Naomi sat, finally, deliberate, controlled movement, and opened her briefcase. Not to distract, to prepare. Files, handwritten notes, a thin leather planner. The life that defined her duty structure clarity resumed like a formal robe being placed around her shoulders again. Her hand paused briefly on a photograph tucked at the sleeve of the planner, her son graduation cap. Crooked arms around her smile, wide hers, small but real. A private memory, not dramatic, not political. Just love and pride in a life built through sacrifice and resolve. A reminder of what she carried and who she taught by example. A soft knock interrupted again. Then the door opened just enough for a face she did not expect, the officer with the knee from the floor. Security knocked once and admitted him. He had insisted on speaking. He stepped inside, hat in hands, posture stiff, as if bracing for a storm. His eyes couldn't settle first at her face, then the floor, then somewhere near her hands, as if he could not bear the weight of full recognition. Judge Carter, he began, voice lower than earlier. I came to say no. Her tone cut gently, precisely. Do not offer apology to protect yourself from consequence. He froze, mouth still parted around a word that could no longer form. She didn't soften. Fairness and softness were not synonyms. Your actions were not error, she continued. They were choice. I thought, he started. You assumed, she corrected. Assumption is not thought. He swallowed. I was doing my job. You were enforcing your prejudice. The statement held no fire. It did not need any. Truth does not burn when delivered clean. It simply lands. His fingers tightened around the hat brim. I didn't know who you were. And if I had been anyone else, she said, voice level, I would still have been on that floor. The difference is only consequence, not harm. He blinked, stunned by the clarity. People rarely hear the truth this precise about themselves. When they do, it does not bruise, it breaks. I never meant. You meant exactly what you did, she said. You did not mean the outcome. He stood, silent, breath uneven, stripped of defense. Leave, she said. He hesitated, not from defiance, from realization. Then he nodded, once the motion small, and exited. The door clicked shut behind him. He did not look back. Naomi remained still. She did not savor the exchange. Power was not performance. It was responsibility. And responsibility does not gloat. A brief tap on the glass startled a soft shift in her posture. The young teenager from earlier stood outside the window, having wandered close while passing the corridor. She seemed unsure whether to wave or retreat. Her eyes held apology and awe in equal measure. Naomi lifted her chin, slightly acknowledgement. The girl's shoulders dropped with visible relief before she walked on. No spectacle, just quiet human connection. The airport intercom announced a boarding call in the distance. Life moved unaware of the way truth rearranges spaces even after silence resumes. Naomi placed her planner on the table and closed it gently. There would be hearings. There would be process. But she was not here to punish out of vengeance. She was here to protect the principle that had protected her entire life when dignity stood unshielded. Justice exists for those who cannot demand it aloud. A subtle knock followed. The airline manager reappeared, composed again, now more respectful than cautious. "Pre-boarding for your flight has begun. We can escort you when you're ready." She rose with the same precision she had carried all morning. "I am ready." As they walked toward the gate, the manager did not lead. He walked slightly behind, letting her presence move first. Passengers waiting to board straightened when they saw her. Not all recognized her title, but they recognized something else, a person who had refused erasure and forced truth into the open without raising her voice once. The gate agent met her eyes. No forced smile, no strained cheer, genuine respect. "We're honored to have you on board today," she said quietly. Honor is simple. It doesn't need volume. Naomi stepped forward. For a moment, the terminal quieted around her. Not in fear, in witness. And witness is where justice begins. The jet bridge hummed with the low, controlled energy of pre-boarding. Passengers shuffled forward in single file, scanning phones, adjusting jackets, rehearsing polite nods they would give to strangers pressed too close. No one spoke loudly. Airports demand a certain discipline order through shared inconvenience. Naomi walked without a hesitation, not rushing, not performing calm, simply moving the way someone moves when they are certain of who they are and who they are not. Her briefcase brushed gently against her leg, the familiar cadence of purpose. The airline manager peeled away once she stepped into the cabin, head bowed slightly in respect, as if leaving a courtroom after a ruling he understood but never expected to witness. The flight attendant in the doorway greeted her posture, straight voice quiet from knowing rather than guessing. "Right this way, Judge Carter." A title spoken softly carries more gravity than one spoken loudly. Naomi inclined her head. Not gratitude, acknowledgement. They walked her not to first class, not to a private partition, but to a single seat in row one aisle, unobstructed view of the cabin. She placed her briefcase under the seat before her and sat without adjusting twice. Efficiency is a form of dignity. A businessman, settling a few rows back, paused mid-movement, recognizing her face from somewhere he could not place. His brow furrowed not from suspicion this time, but recognition mixed with discomfort. The quiet awareness that the world he assumed was orderly had revealed a fault line he never noticed. He looked away first. People boarded. Bags lifted. Seatbelts clicked. A mother whispered comfort to a toddler struggling with change in air pressure. A college student rubbed tired eyes. A tourist in a bright jacket practiced patience. Life continued indifferent to individual humiliation, unaware that justice had begun shifting its weight. When the door sealed and the cabin locked, Naomi rested one hand gently on her briefcase. She didn't close her eyes. She didn't sigh. She just breathed steady, measured. Her world had not fractured. It had revealed itself. The plane pushed back engines building. As they climbed, she watched clouds slide beneath them, not marveling, not reflecting, observing. Clarity does not need theatrics. Mid-flight with in-flight Wi-Fi enabled her phone surfaced a single queued message time-stamped minutes before takeoff. She unlocked it. A notification from the chief judge. "Call me when you land. Urgent. No panic, no apology. Protocol." And below it, a separate message brief from her law clerk. "Media request regarding airport incident. Declined on your behalf. Await guidance." She turned the screen face down once more. Not denial. Timing. She did not build truth through microphones. She built it through process. The flight continued in muted stillness. She worked through case notes methodically. Page turn, annotation, pause. The world outside shrank into soft white blur. Here altitude removed noise. The air was cleaner at distance. When wheels touched down in D.C., the cabin stirred awake, bags retrieved phones, reconnected lives resuming in bits of notification and light. She stood only after those around her moved. Power does not rush to prove itself. At the exit, the flight attendant offered a nod. Not formal. Personal. If anyone deserves a peaceful landing, it's you. Naomi held her gaze for a second, long enough to honor sincerity, not long enough to invite spectacle. Then she stepped into the jet bridge and walked into the cool, controlled brightness of the terminal. Washington National Airport. Her city, her jurisdiction, her arena. No crowds waited, no cameras, no whispers. Just business travelers adjusting coats, families corralling children, and employees navigating routines. Normal life. The quiet before paperwork becomes assault protocol turns to precedent, and systems learn who will not bend. Outside the arrivals area, a black sedan idled at the curb. Not security, her court transport. The driver stepped out, hurried to open the rear door. "Good morning, Judge." She entered without comment. The door closed softly. The world muted again. Traffic merged, Capitol skyline rising in view, marble, glass, steel institutions built to look permanent and behave conditional. The driver kept his eyes forward, voice low. "The Chief Judge requested you go directly to Chambers." Of course. Nothing in her tone shifted. Chambers meant seriousness. Directly meant urgency. The road curved along the Potomac City, stirring awake. Joggers traced the river path. Commuters queued at lights. Newspapers waited on steps. Normalcy, thin as paper, stretched around everyone. At the courthouse, marble steps greeted her wide and solemn. Security officers at the entrance straightened when they saw her badge. This time, no hesitation. No glance past her as if to search for another person of authority. A simple nod and respectful, "Good morning, Judge Carter." Familiar? Correct? Expected? The metal detector beeped faintly as others entered. Naomi passed through the private judicial entrance. Silence returned, institutional and steady. Fluorescent lights hummed softly against polished floors. Law clerks moved briskly from offices to conference rooms. No one spoke loudly here. Power traveled by footstep, not voice. Her chamber's door stood open. Her clerk rose immediately. "He's waiting." Inside, the chief judge sat at her small conference table instead of the customary desk, a subtle choice that meant the matter was personal, not ceremonial. He looked up as Naomi entered. His expression was composed lines of the city, visible beneath his calm, burden awareness, responsibility. "Sit," he said gently. She did posture, erect, hands resting on her thighs. "I saw the footage." No preface, no breath wasted. "It will escalate," he continued. "Quietly first, then publicly, national within hours." Naomi nodded once. "I assumed." "We will not pretend it happened outside our jurisdiction," he said. "Not when the person on the ground was one of our own." Her eyes did not soften, not because of rank. "No." He paused, choosing precision. "Because the system does not get to fail you privately when you protect it publicly." Silence settled. Agreement hung between them, heavy but clean. "We're opening an internal judicial inquiry not into you, but into airport federal contractor conduct. Disciplinary notice served. Temporary measure in place." "Administrative leave?" she asked. "Administrative leave pending investigation." He didn't hedge. "Effective immediately." She nodded again. Administrative leave in judicial language meant, "We will protect integrity before ego." He studied her face. "I expect you to understand the gesture." "I do." "You are not removed. You are shielded." "Shielding allows others room to maneuver," she replied, "and gives us space to enforce, not react." His voice remained steady. He wasn't asking permission. He was informing someone who would not need hand-holding. She respected that. He extended a sealed envelope across the table. "Formal notice. Temporary reassignment. Standard terms." She accepted without opening it. Procedure deserved ceremony, even in private. "You'll speak with the Inspector General this afternoon," he added, "and civil rights oversight tomorrow." "I expected as much." He exhaled, relieved but not relaxed. No press. Of course. No statements. "Until they are written," she confirmed. He nodded, a faint shadow of respect behind his eyes. "You will return to bench the moment the findings clear." Naomi's reply was measured. "Or the moment they conclude cause to reform." "Reform will happen regardless." His tone carried certainty. Your presence accelerated what was overdue. He stood. She did as well. No eye contact wavered. Naomi, he said quietly, power reveals itself most in restraint. I am aware, and dignity is strongest when exercised without permission. I do not seek permission. A brief silence, acknowledgement, not challenge. He stepped aside, letting her pass first. Outside the conference room, the courthouse moved normally. Hearings scheduled, clerks typing, attorneys reviewing files. Life again unchanged by individual pain. Systems do not pause, they adjust. Her clerk approached with a tablet. You have calls pending from 3 committee chairs, 2 editors, and the Office of Judicial Ethics. Naomi raised a hand. Clear the calls. All? Yes. The clerk swallowed. Understood. Naomi reached her chamber's door and stopped, hand resting lightly on the frame. She looked at her desk, orderly structured, ready for decisions she would not deliver today. Case files stacked, legal texts aligned. A fountain pen she had used for 10 years, centered in its holder. She did not close the door. She left it open, lights on, files untouched. Work paused, not abandoned, not surrendered. She turned and walked toward the elevator. Clerks glanced up as she passed, not with pity, with recognition. Leadership is clearest when stripped of title's protection. In the lobby, sunlight cast long lines across marble. Her heels traced precise rhythm across the floor. Outside, the city breathed. She stepped into the air, crisp and direct. Administrative leave was not exile, it was staging. Systems protect themselves first. But systems change only when someone forces them to explain why they move the way they do. She walked with no escort, no fanfare. A passerby glanced at her, unaware of what she carried, unaware of what had already begun. Cars passed. Government employees crossed intersections. A delivery person lifted boxes from a van. Normal life again, humming. Justice does not interrupt daily tasks, it expands in the silence between them. She reached the sidewalk and paused. Wind moved lightly across her coat. Her phone buzzed again, more messages waiting to be read. She did not look. Instead, she lifted her face to the morning steady breath, leaving her lips not in relief, in readiness. She had not fallen, she had not bent. The world had shifted instead. Placed on administrative leave by procedure, empowered by truth, positioned for consequence. Nothing about her posture suggested uncertainty, and nothing about the air around her suggested the world would remain the same. Justice had begun moving, and it would not walk quietly anymore. No one waited for her outside the courthouse, no cameras, no crowd, no spectacle. Quiet was a privilege and also a battlefield. Today it was both. Naomi walked without rushing, coat collar sharp against the morning air, steps even purposeful. She crossed the plaza alone, not because she lacked support, but because she did not need to be seen holding it. Injustice often announces itself with noise. Correction moves silently first. A black SUV pulled to the curb, glass-tinted government plates discreet. A woman stepped out, tall, steady posture, a government badge clipped to her coat. Her presence was not the dramatic kind. It was the kind that arrived when institutions decided to stop ignoring a problem. She approached with the controlled pace of someone used to commanding rooms without raising her voice. Judge Carter. Naomi regarded her evenly. Miss Arroyo. Deputy Inspector General Elena Arroyo offered a nod, not of sympathy, but of respect between people who understood systems from the inside, not from headlines. I'm here on behalf of the Inspector General's office, Arroyo said. We're handling this directly. It wasn't a sentence meant to soothe. It was a message. This won't be buried. A passing pedestrian slowed, sensing something official, but not knowing what. Naomi didn't break eye contact. Arroyo continued, voice low but clear. Federal oversight wants the full record. Footage, officer statements, audio, internal communications. Without filters. Filters are where truth dies, Naomi replied. A faint, sharp smirk touched Arroyo's expression, the closest she came to agreement. We'll visit the airport security office in an hour. I'd like your presence. You don't need my statement yet. No, Arroyo agreed. I need your presence. They behave differently when the hill they're climbing is in the room. Power acknowledged without exaggeration. Naomi inclined her head once. I will attend. Arroyo didn't linger. She returned to her vehicle door, closing with soft precision. The SUV pulled away, blending into the ordinary flow of federal vehicles around the Capitol, power disguised as routine. Naomi resumed walking. She did not hurry. The world had rushed against her that morning at the airport. It would now keep pace, she said. A block ahead, a familiar figure stood near the corner, not waiting, simply positioned. Her law clerk, Daniel Coat Too Big. Files clutched like a shield, unsure if he should approach or remain a respectful distance away. He chose approach. "Judge, I didn't want to intrude," he began, voice cautious, earnest. "But I thought you should see this." He extended a tablet. Not sensational headlines, internal judicial memos, congressional inquiry signals, emails from civil rights organizations. Conversations moving at the highest level without public sound. She skimmed without reacting. Several messages contained a single subject line: formal request for case pattern review. Others shorter. Standing by. Full support. Not forgotten. One line stood alone, unsigned, internal secure channel. "You did not kneel. We will not either." She handed the tablet back. "Prepare summaries. Objective language." "Yes, Judge." He hesitated then, "if I may." She waited. "You taught me once that silence is only protective when it's chosen, not forced. Today, it felt like the world was trying to force yours." And now she asked. He swallowed. "Now it feels like it's listening." She held his gaze for a moment. The compliment wasn't flattery, it was observation. She nodded once. He exhaled, relieved, and stepped aside so she could pass. Down the street, her pace remained steady. Every so often someone glanced at her. Not recognition of who she was professionally, but recognition of someone who carried weight without bending under it. Near the corner, another form approached a woman in a navy coat, case files hugged to her chest. U.S. Attorney's Office badge clipped to her lapel. Someone Naomi had crossed paths with in corridors and case summaries, but rarely spoken to directly. "Judge Carter," she began, breath visible in the morning air. "I reviewed the footage personally. I sent formal notice to DHS. No one is dismissing this as procedural misunderstanding." Naomi regarded her. "You aren't here to plead neutrality." "No." A firm shake of the head. Neutrality is a choice only when power is balanced. This wasn't. Clarity, sharp, measured. The woman added quietly, "For what it's worth." Every young attorney in our office watched that footage differently than the senior ones. Meaning, they saw themselves in you. The seniors saw themselves interrogating what they would have done. Uncomfortable truth spoken cleanly. Naomi's response was simple. "Good." Not gratitude, judgment. The attorney stepped aside. Naomi moved forward again. At the intersection, traffic paused. A city bus rumbled by, windows fogged. A food vendor set up a cart, steam rising into morning light. A pair of public defenders hurried by, arms full of files, voices discussing bail hearings. Life steady, justice preparing in silence. A quiet chime came from her phone. Not a message. A calendar reminder. Sentencing review, 15 p.m. For a moment she breathed, not deep, not dramatic, just steady. Work waited. Cases continued. People whose names she didn't know yet, whose futures hung in balance, waited for her judgment, her clarity, her refusal to take shortcuts with someone else's life. Duty continued even if she could not sit the bench today. Another alert, new email, subject line flashing. Civil Rights Bureau requesting documentation. Then another, Judicial Conduct Oversight confirming meeting time. Then, Senate Counsel request to confer quietly. The world was not exploding, it was aligning. Naomi crossed the street just as the light changed. The rhythm of the day swallowed her again the way only someone who belonged to power without needing to display it could move. Across the plaza, a man in a dark coat leaned against a stone pillar, posture casual but presence unmistakably intentional, not intimidation, observation. When she neared, he straightened. Judge Carter. She recognized him. Federal Court Security Liaison. Years of service, understated confidence, eyes that missed little. "I want to say something clear," he said. "Say it. Every so often the system forgets who its backbone is." He paused, tone flat and honest. "You reminded them." She didn't smile. She didn't soften. "It is not a lesson I enjoy teaching. Lessons that matter rarely are." He held her gaze. "We're at your disposal for whatever follows." "Follow the law," she said. "That will be enough." He nodded. "It will this time." He walked away. No fanfare, no lingering. True support rarely waits to be thanked. Naomi continued toward the curb where a second black sedan had arrived, this one sent by the Inspector General's office. The door opened from inside. Arroyo leaned slightly into view. They're already trying to limit the scope, she said. We're not allowing it. Scope is what truth fills, Naomi answered. Arroyo's mouth twitched acknowledgement, not amusement. Ready, Naomi settled into the seat. The door shut. The car pulled into traffic. As they moved toward the airport, Arroyo watched her, not sizing her up, aligning strategy with presence. You understand, Arroyo said quietly, this will not be clean. It shouldn't be. We'll face resistance. We face culture. And backlash. We face reality. Arroyo gave a short nod. You speak with precision. Precision avoids confusion being used as defense. Arroyo exhaled once, not relief, not disbelief, recognition. This will move policy. It must move conduct. Arroyo leaned back, gaze forward. That's why we wanted you there. The city slipped past outside monuments of stone institutions behind glass history etched in marble. The kind of place where power liked to believe it built itself. Naomi knew better. Power was maintained by vigilance, not architecture. As they drove, her phone buzzed again. A new forward. Internal memo, DHS leadership requesting briefing. Urgent. Below it, subcommittee interest forming. And a short text from someone she had not heard from in a long time. A fellow judge retired known for quiet spine and sharp rulings. They forgot power isn't given, it's recognized. She closed her phone. Recognition was not victory. Policy was not culture. Culture was not justice. But it had begun. The car merged into highway traffic. The airport appeared in the distance, planes rising against thin winter light. Some journeys start in silence. Others begin the moment silence ends. Naomi rested one hand on her briefcase again, not clinging, not bracing, owning. Today she was not walking into a fight. She was walking into a system learning it could no longer pretend blindness. And systems change slower than people, but they change harder when they are forced to see. The sedan eased toward the federal entrance of the airport. Guards keyed radios. Gates opened. Arroyo looked at Naomi one more time. You don't have to speak today. Your presence is enough. No, Naomi replied, calm as a courtroom pause. Presence is the minimum. She opened the door before the car fully stopped stepping out in one smooth motion. Gravel crunched underfoot. Cold air touched her face, not harsh, not soft. Neutral, like truth. Inside the terminal, the administrative wing waited. Doors that yesterday would not have opened for her without question. Doors that could no longer afford hesitation. 1 hour later, they crossed the threshold. Not as victim, not as symbol, not as headline. As the system she served returning to collect its due understanding. Truth did not need applause, it needed recognition. And today it was being recognized. Airport administration halls always looked the same. Beige walls, federal seal glass windows that revealed nothing, and blue carpet squares chosen by someone who valued durable silence over beauty. Today, the air inside those walls did not feel normal. Judge Naomi Carter walked with Deputy IG Arroyo beside her. Not flanked, not escorted. Accompanied. That distinction mattered. Officials recognized her before they fully understood why they recognized her. A brief flicker of panic crossed faces as if the building remembered before their thoughts caught up. A secretary nearly stood from her chair, then froze, not sure whether to speak or remain invisible. Naomi did not acknowledge the confusion. Respect came from composure, not suggestion. They entered a glass conference room. The space had been prepared quickly. Laptops open, binders stacked, a pitcher of untouched water sweating on the table. 3 senior airport security officials sat inside, posture stiff. The federal security director for the airport, a uniformed field supervisor, and legal counsel wearing a suit too pressed for comfort. When Naomi entered, every chair shifted microscopically, a reflex, not courtesy. Presence rewrites posture. Arroyo placed her badge on the table. We'll begin. No warm introductions, no pleasantries. Efficiency is a form of respect for truth. The director spoke first. Practiced tone. Judge Carter, let me start by saying, you may start by presenting the policies governing officer discretion at pre-check lanes, Naomi said. Not hostile, not emotional, just correct. The director blinked once, then nodded to counsel. Paperwork slid forward. Naomi didn't touch it. I'm familiar with the text, she said. Quote, the enforcement threshold. Counsel hesitated, a brief scramble through memory disguised as thought. Officer judgment in determining suspicious behavior shall be guided by physical signs. Credential inconsistency and observed conduct inconsistent with passenger intent. Observed conduct, Naomi repeated. Define. The room stilled. The supervisor cleared his throat. Behavior that suggests attempts to avoid screening, evade protocol, or conceal identity. Was sitting on the floor while handcuffed consistent with those behaviors, Naomi asked plainly. No accusation, just surgical relevance. The supervisor's jaw tightened. In retrospect is luxury, she interrupted. What was the justification in the moment? Silence. Arroyo spoke, eyes sharp. Answer the question. The supervisor shifted. She was resistant. Naomi's gaze did not waver. List the resistance. A beat. 2. Truth cornered reveals itself by pause. Verbal refusal to provide explanation. Naomi's tone remained identical. Audio review shows I said, I belong here. Is that refusal? The director's hand twitched near a pen. The officer perceived. Perception, Naomi said, is not license. Another silence. This one lasted longer. Arroyo slid a file across the table. Prior complaints, all involving minority passengers, all dismissed internally. Review signature, same supervisor each time. The supervisor stared at the table. Not guilt, recognition. Naomi watched him. Explain dismissal criteria. Counsel inhaled. Lack of corroborating evidence. No attempt was made to seek evidence, Naomi replied. Refusal to investigate produces the absence you cite. Truth does not need volume. It requires precision. The director shifted uncomfortably. Judge Carter, we take bias seriously. You take bias seriously once documented by cameras, she corrected, not before. Arroyo did not soften it. We will take sworn statements today. Failure to disclose is obstruction. Counsel's jaw tensed. We will cooperate fully. Not a promise, a survival instinct. Naomi's phone vibrated silently in her pocket. She didn't reach for it. I will speak now, she said. The room braced without knowing why. What happened to me is not unique. It is only documented. A simple sentence, an indictment without theatrics. You did not fail because a judge was involved. You failed because a human was on the ground. A single shift happened, shoulders lowered across the table, not in defeat but realization. She continued, discipline the officer responsible, but if you stop there, this repeats. Director swallowed. We intend systemic review. Intention follows exposure, Naomi said. Integrity precedes it. Arroyo slid another file forward. Preliminary report recommends immediate officer suspension. Counsel blinked, effective when, immediately Arroyo replied, badge surrendered today. The supervisor's breath caught. The director closed his eyes briefly, acceptance hitting like cold water. And Arroyo added psychological and civil rights retraining across this facility. Mandatory. Oversight monitored, linked to promotion and retention metrics. Counsel nodded slowly. We understand. Understanding is the first step toward correction, not the last. Naomi asked quietly. Who determined training frequency previously? The supervisor answered. Internal discretion. And internal discretion led here. No one argued. She stood. They followed without thinking, instinctive deference. I am not your cautionary tale, she said. I am your mirror. She turned to leave. Arroyo paused only long enough to say, we follow up in 72 hours. No delays. As they stepped into the hallway, the glass door whispered shut behind them, sealing a room full of people who had just been forced into sight. They walked with the same silent authority that had entered. No triumph, no smirk. Justice is not a performance. Outside the hallway was quiet except for a janitor maneuvering a cleaning cart. He looked up startled to see who passed. His eyes flicked to Naomi recognition without intrusion. He nodded once, subtle, respectful. She returned the nod. Not reward recognition equal in weight. Arroyo turned to her outside the admin wing. You know this goes beyond here. Yes. There will be resistance. There always is before change, Naomi said. Arroyo almost smiled. You don't push, you let them collapse under their own defense. Pressure distorts truth. Naomi answered. Silence reveals it. A pause. The kind held not in uncertainty, but in shared understanding. We'll brief Congress, Arroyo said. Quietly first. Quietly is fine, Naomi replied. Noise will arrive soon enough. Arroyo opened the car door. Until then, Naomi said, I remain what they did not expect to face. Arroyo nodded, expression sharpened by respect earned, not given. We'll move. Naomi stepped back, watching the vehicle ease away among airport traffic. No staging, no cameras, no applause. Truth rarely travels with fanfare at the moment it matters most. She stood alone by the curb again. Suitcase wheels rattling somewhere behind her. announcements echoing faintly overhead. Travelers hurried, distracted by itineraries and gate changes, unaware history had shifted 4 walls away. A young father passed with a stroller. A servicewoman rolled a small carry-on. A little boy stared up at Naomi, uncertain why she felt important. Children know weight without learning it. She looked at the sky for a moment, not searching. Aligning. Planes lifted in the distance, metal wings splitting morning light. She didn't think of the floor she had been pinned to. She didn't think of the headlines that would come. She thought of process correction trajectory. Justice was not loud today, but it had direction. She turned, coat brushing lightly as she walked, each step steady. The world continued moving. She continued shaping the quiet part that would soon make noise. Power is never loudest at the microphone. It is loudest at the moment the system changes course without announcing it, and the course had already changed. 2 weeks later, Washington moved as always, guarded, urgent, polished. Power wore suits. Power whispered in hallways. And yet, something in the city's posture had shifted imperceptibly, not in the marble, not in the flags, but in the way people paused half a second longer before dismissing someone who did not match a template in their mind. Judge Naomi Carter walked into the federal building through a side entrance. Not escorted, not announced. Just a presence the building had learned to notice. Employees slowed as she passed, not gawking, not dramatic, simply aware. Awareness is the earliest stage of accountability. She reached the closed-door council chamber. A clerk opened the door immediately. No hesitation this time, and she entered a room where senior judicial and agency leaders sat around a long table. No one stood for her. Good. Ceremony belonged to law, not ego. Deputy I.G. Arroyo was there. Notes crisp, eyes sharper. The federal security director sat farther down the table. Jacket removed humility, now part of posture, not act. Internal counsel. Oversight committee. A representative from the Senate Civil Rights Subcommittee. These meetings did not happen for footnotes. They happened when institutions chose to change themselves rather than wait for someone else to do it. A brief silence. Then the chair spoke. Judge Carter, findings have concluded. Naomi did not fold her hands. She did not brace. She simply listened. The chair continued. The officer who restrained you has been terminated. Supervisor removed. Internal oversight chain revised. Civil rights monitors assigned. Independent reporting channels implemented. Quarterly audits mandated. No applause, no nods. Arroyo added, all major airports will receive the same directives. New standards filed. Effective immediately. The Senate representative leaned forward. We will formalize an amendment for federal transportation bias oversight standards. It will bear your name. No reaction from Naomi's face. Recognition is not legacy. Systems improved are. The director cleared his throat quietly, carefully. We did not see what we should have seen. Thank you for making it impossible to ignore. Naomi answered evenly. I did not make it impossible. The truth did. Silence followed, not stunned, not awkward. A silence that acknowledged fact. The chair closed a folder. Your temporary administrative status is lifted. Return to bench tomorrow. A clerk handed Naomi a single-sheet reinstatement. No ceremony, just the line of authority moving where it belonged. She stood. The room did not erupt. It did not need to. When the chair spoke again, it was not directive, it was respect. Judge Carter, justice is quieter than we pretend. Thank you for enforcing it exactly that way. Naomi looked at him. Justice is only loud when it has been ignored too long. Arroyo's gaze sharpened. Then we won't make it whisper again. Naomi nodded once and left the room. No speech, no victory walk, just completion. Outside, the winter light had softened, brushing the steps with pale gold. Reporters lingered across the plaza, hoping, but not expecting. She did not turn toward them. Silence was her statement, and she protected it. Inside the marble hall, a young court intern stood frozen, holding files too heavy for his frame. He swallowed, then asked softly, Judge Carter, do you need assistance? No, she said. Continue your tasks. He hesitated, then gathered courage. Ma'am, thank you. For what? For making the rest of us believe standards still mean something. His voice wasn't reverent, it was relieved. She didn't answer. He didn't need her approval, only her example. She continued toward the exit. Outside, the city hummed. Cars, footsteps, cold air, quiet proof that life keeps moving after truth has done its work. Across the street, a familiar security guard from her building leaned against the railing. Not waiting, just present. He nodded once, same way he had the morning she arrived from the airport. Not deference. Recognition. She returned the nod and kept walking. At the corner, she paused at a crosswalk. A mother held a child's hand, guiding them forward. A delivery cyclist sped past. A bus sighed to a stop. Life, uninterrupted, improved by inches. A notification arrived on her phone. She ignored it. Reform would continue without her glancing down every moment. She did not need proof, she had already delivered it. She crossed the street. No soundtrack, no cameras, only footsteps. A woman who had not raised her voice, had not performed outrage, had not demanded reverence, and yet shifted policy, employment culture, and memory. Justice rarely announces itself. It just refuses to move aside. And she walked forward, coat-steady posture, even pace certain. Not triumphant, unbowed. There are people who declare power, and there are people who do not need to. Naomi Carter lived in the second category, and the world now knew the difference. She turned the corner and disappeared into the city. She served not as symbol, not as victim, not as myth, but as evidence that dignity when held steady becomes change. That was enough, and enough held firmly lasts.